Welcome to another episode of Back Nine Report with our good buddy Mike May, who's in the house. Mike, what's up?
We're just another great day after weekend golf, riding golf, talking golf, and happy to be on the air with you today.
Yeah, I'm up here in Cadillac, Michigan. We're getting a blizzard up here today, so we've got another 4 inches already on the ground. It's supposed to snow clear till midnight, and the wind's blowing about 15, 20 miles an hour. It's just beautiful. It's wonderful. It makes you think about playing golf, man,
Sounds like hot chocolate weather.
or something stronger.
Yes.
Mike, today we want to talk a little bit about the LIV. They kicked off their season last weekend in Mexico at Mayakoba, an event that used to be on the PGA Tour, now is an LIV event. Of course, Greg Norman has a good relationship there with the people because he designed that golf course, so he's known about that for a long time. And one of the biggest things that's going around right now is this qualification thing, is the official world golf rankings and all that stuff, because these guys are falling down. For example, Dustin Johnson is down to number 54 in the world on the official world golf ranking. Patrick Reed, 63, Brooks Koepka, number 90. So, like, you have to be in the top 60 to get invited to the majors. And Reed is now outside that number. Koepka, of course, is outside. Dustin Johnson, but a couple of these guys already still have some exemption left because they've won. DJ Reed have won the Masters. Koepka has won the PGA and the U.S. Open, so he's still maybe got some eligibility left from that. But these guys are falling way down the rankings. In another year or two, they're not going to qualify for the majors unless they start getting ranking points. To give you an idea, Mike, there's some other rankings out there. Sports Illustrated has come out with one. And to give you an idea, Dustin Johnson on the Sports Illustrated one would be number 15. Patrick Reed would be 54, and Koepka would be 53. So they would still be eligible for the majors if they would be using the Sports Illustrated ranking instead of the official world ranking. So this is getting a lot of press, even more and more so than it did last year. And we said, Mike, you weren't here, but when Carlos and I were talking last year about the LIV, we said they needed two things. They needed a TV deal and they needed official world golf ranking points for their players. They've got the TV deal. I'm going to talk about a little bit more about that in a minute. But while I'm talking about this ranking thing, do you see what are your thoughts on this ranking, on the official world golf ranking, not including the LIV? Do you think they should be in? When do you think they're going to start that? All that good stuff.
Well, I read the story today about the Sports Illustrated rankings, and I thought that was a breath of fresh air. It's probably more realistic than the official world golf rankings, which have been around for years. And I think for those to really have any meat and credibility, they've got to include these top players like Mickelson, like Reed, Stenson from Sweden, and of course Dustin Johnson. It's Oosthuizen. They're too good. I mean, Charles Howell III just won in Mexico, so he would, in theory, move up those rankings. So I really think that if the official world golf rankings want any sustained credibility, they've got to reach some type of compromise and recognize that these players are out there, and they deserve some type of exposure and recognition. And I know there's political issues at the forefront of this, so it's not something I can solve, but I'm sure I'm not the only one thinking this way right now.
Let me ask you a question. If you were the guy setting the ranking system, would you give an equal number of points to every LIV event, although there are only 48 players, there are only 3 rounds, there's no cut? Would you give them the same number of points that, say, like last week's Honda Classic would get, or the designated event the week before out on the West Coast? Do you feel like how would you do those ranking points, LIV versus PGA Tour?
I would not recognize it on par. I think the PGA Tour event still deserves more attention, more credibility, bigger field, 4 rounds, not 3 rounds. So I think that the LIV would do itself a favor by going to 72 holes, but that was one of the attractions of of their format. Somewhere maybe on par with what a European Tour event gets. Not trying to show any disrespect towards the DP Tour, but and maybe not as much as the DP Tour event, but they need something. And good players are winning on the LIV circuit, and for that to go unnoticed is a disservice to all involved.
Let's talk a little bit about Mexico this week. So we had the LIV actually on a network. This was their first event of the year in Mayakoba, and so CW Sports carried it. I did watch a little bit of it. It was pretty well done, really. It was so much better than what they had on YouTube before. That was just kind of like a nightmare. And it was pretty well done. The camera work was really pretty good. I thought it was very good, actually. It was on par with CBS, NBC, Golf Channel, that kind of thing. I didn't have any real problem with it. The broadcasters, I love Jerry Faults. I've known him for a long time, talked to him several times. David Faherty, of course, is a great announcer, analyst, color guy, and always says something funny. And he was much better at the CW than he was on NBC, because I think NBC had him just like basically muzzled the last couple of years. He couldn't say anything because I think they were just watching, to give him crap. But he did pretty well. Jerry Foltz was good, except that Jerry went off on a tirade about the OWGR not giving LIV players points yet. And so he went on this little 2 or 3 minute tirade rant, which was okay, but it wasn't like him at all to do that. So I imagine Greg Norman probably put him up to doing that. But I'm not a fan. I'm still not a fan of the shotgun start thing, and it's hard to figure out where everybody's at. On the PGA Tour, where you got a pro start and the leaders are coming up at the end. You know what you got to do. You know where they stand. You know how many holes they got to play, what holes they have to play, where the birdies are, all that good stuff. With this, it's like, okay, yeah, they're playing and they're on some hole, and okay, they made a birdie, and they got this NASCAR-like pole on the side with the scores on it, and it's kind of a jumbled up mess. I don't really care for all that. But to get back to what I originally said, I thought CW did a pretty good job doing the broadcast. I was impressed with that.
Yeah, I concur. I watched a little bit myself. It's a start. I don't expect it to be an Emmy award-winning performance right out of the gate. Again, the 54-hole shotgun start, I sort of have an issue with. I guess I'm a traditionalist at heart, and I like to see the leaders go off last. And those things are tough to change. But again, they've got that TV exposure, and I did not see the rant by Jerry Foltz, but I'm sure he made some good points. And let's hope that calmer heads prevail and they start using some common sense and leave the opinions outside the room and do what's right for golf and to give the sport the credibility it deserves.
Charles Howell III, Chucky Three Sticks, got the individual win. I mean, he kind of did it going away. He was playing outstanding golf. The guys who were behind him really kind of went in the tank on Sunday, and so he had a big win. He gets $4 million for the individual win, plus his team won the team event, so he splits another $5 million 4 ways with that, so he gets a $1.25 million. So he cleaned up with $5.25 million last weekend. Pretty good weekend's work for Chuck, because that's a big payday for him. He had, what do you have? Maybe 3 wins on the PGA Tour in a 20-year career. He was a cut-making machine, though. I mean, he made 467 cuts out of 600 starts. That's 77%, almost 78% of cuts made. That's really good. He had 100 top tens, and in total, he earned $42 million on the PGA Tour. Not a bad career. Most people, if they made $43 million in their working life, they'd be pretty happy. But no, he jumps over, probably gets 20 or 30 million guaranteed, plus he makes $5 million last weekend. At 43 years old, he really couldn't compete with the young guys anymore on the PGA Tour. He did make 11 cuts last year and 16 starts on the PGA Tour before he went over to the LIV. But now with that guarantee in his pocket, he didn't have anything to lose by switching, and he ends up a big winner with a big check. He's all set. He qualifies now for next year for the LIV. So Chucky Three Sticks looks like he's in pretty good shape.
Yes, and of course, then on the PGA Tour, he would have earned a trip to Augusta, and he's an Augusta native. But yeah, when you look at the numbers, a $4 million first place prize, you can't really blame him for making the jump, especially the age that he was, and he had been toiling for years. 3 wins, as you mentioned, and I read that same stat this morning. And good, solid player. And again, having you argue with that kind of success and that kind of payday, it's tough to say no. And I think he did the right thing for himself.
Mike, we also talked last week a little bit about the Brooks Koepka situation on the rumor that he may actually want to come back to the PGA Tour. And I just read a thing this week that Andy Ogletree, who was a former U.S. amateur champion, he was a standout golfer at Georgia Tech. He was actually the low amateur at the Masters one year. And so he jumped over to the LIV last year because he struggled. When he came out on tour, he had some hip surgery. He just never quite recovered from that, was never able to quite get his swing back and get back to the level he wanted to be. So he bounced around between the Korn Ferry and the PGA Tour and some other things, and it just wasn't working for him. So he jumped to the LIV. Well, he shoots a really bad round in the first tournament, and they actually dump him. They kick him out after the London event last year, their first event, the first LIV event last year. And so now he's got no place to play. Well, he can get on the Asian tour because he played on the LIV a little bit. So he's playing on the Asian tour and this international tour, and he's actually won a couple times now. And now, since it's been a year since he's been away from the LIV, now he can try to come back to the PGA Tour. Once the guys that went to the LIV have to wait a year once they play their last event or once they decide to leave the LIV before they can requalify for the PGA Tour, the Korn Ferry, or any of the PGA Tour tours. And so he's now trying to kind of come back and get back on the PGA Tour.
I read that account. That's pretty tough criteria for having to, for leaving and wanting to come back. And if a prominent player like Brooks Koepka or Ian Poulter or Oosthuizen or Justin Johnson or Patrick Reed want to come back, and I'm a sponsor of an event that they've played before, I'd be inclined to call the PGA Tour and go, oh, by the way, I'm happy to be a sponsor, but I see that player A wants to come back, and it certainly would benefit my field and my attendance and my donations to charity. If we could allow this young man to play in our tournament, I know you've got rules, but let's try to find an area of compromise. Can we get him as a sponsor's exemption or so it's that's a very draconian approach for the PGA Tour, and it'll be interesting if they keep that same standard to other players who do come back, if any do come back, especially those who get kicked off for a lack of performance. That's we're putting up fences here as in walls, and I'm glad I don't have to climb those walls.
Yeah, and speaking of the PGA Tour, so they had the Honda Classic, which it was a 42nd year. It's going to be the last year for Honda. They're dropping their sponsorship. They already have a sponsor lined up for that, so I understand. They haven't announced it yet. Jack Nicklaus was talking on TV yesterday, and he said the PGA Tour has assured him they're going to have a tournament there next year because the Nicklauses raise so much money for charity and for their, the Children's Hospital down there in southeastern Florida that you're familiar with from living down in that area. So there's going to be a tournament. We're not sure who, but the field was such a poor quality. We had 2 designated events in California. They come to the Honda Classic. It's not a designated event, so it's not this big purse. Then they've got 2 designated events following up. So the Honda just got killed. Billy Horschel was the highest ranked player in the field. Most of the competitors were rookies, lesser known tour players, a lot of Korn Ferry guys. So it just is not working for them. And I understand Honda's, frustration and saying, if you're going to do this to me, then I'm out of here. And I think that's pretty much what happened. That's why they left. I understand Jack also said that next year the schedule is going to be significantly different, and that the Honda should have a better spot next year. So I don't know what all that means, but he did say that on TV yesterday. So Mike, I have to say, the tournament turned out pretty good. I didn't get excited about it on really Friday and Saturday. I watched a little bit of it, really just to see 15, 16, and 17, which we had the opportunity to play one day,
We
and
did.
I think you came through there even par. I think that day. I think I lost a ball or two in the water, but I think you played pretty well. But Chris Kirk, who I've liked for a long time and have followed, and then this Eric Cole, his parents were both professional golfers, Laura Ball and Cole, and so it was really fun to watch them. They came right down to the end. That was a lot of fun to watch that.
It just goes to show you that there's so much depth out there for someone like Eric Cole to get an opportunity to play. Had Dustin Johnson and Patrick Reed and Brooks Koepka and a host of other players, Stenson, Poulter, been in the field, he probably would have been the outside looking in. Got a chance. Again, his dad's Bobby Cole, great player in his day, and they come up with a playoff, and it's extended time, great weather down there in South Florida. So it was a great commercial for tourism in that part of the world, and it's the old mentality in team sports: when there's an injury, next man up. Well, in the case of the PGA Tour, they lost a lot of players, and next man up, and it just shows you how great and deep the players are in the world who want to come to the PGA Tour. And I'm sure we'll see Eric Cole in the winter spot hopefully in the next year or two.
And Mike, before we leave the segment on the LIV tour, I know you probably are anxious about this, but these teams that the LIV have, they're for sale now. So if you got an extra 50 or 60 or 80 million dollars laying around, you can buy one of these teams. Now, I don't know what the ROI is on that, how you're going to get your money back, or what the benefit is going to be of owning a golf team, which I personally, even if I had that kind of money, I don't think that'd be something that I'd want to do. But they think it's going to be a big deal, and these teams are going to be for sale.
I'm still scratching my head on the whole team issue. I don't get as excited about it as I do watching individual players, but I've got to give it time. And the newspaper stories that come out really focus on the individual players and not so much the team races. So I think that the PR people with the LIV Tour might want to have a little conversation with the sports writers, going, oh, by the way, I know you're talking about the individual players, but we need a bit of a tutorial on, well, I think the sports writers, golf writers need a tutorial on how that whole team thing works, and how you don't necessarily have to have the winning individual to have the winning team, though this week we had both.
That wraps up our LIV update after their first event of the year. As always, we'll be watching this, commenting on it throughout the year, and seeing how they're doing. I want to thank Mike May for coming in and joining us again this week to talk about this. And we hope that you will go on your computer and log on to either OhioGolfJournal.com, IndianaGolfJournal.com, or MichiganGolfJournal.com. Read our content, our information. We have some great articles, travel tips, equipment reviews, all those kind of things in those magazines. So we'll hope you will take time to do that. Mike, thanks again for stopping in, and we'll see you next time.
Yes, sir.